Hello, welcome to Montserrat. What an incredible view from here. What an incredible peace. We are almost on the top of this gigantic multi-peak rocky mountain that emerges from the relatively low hills of a Catalan landscape. You can see miles away from this mountain, and the breathtaking shadowy skyline of it can be seen from all directions, including the pretty close town of Manresa, where our pilgrimage will bring us next. Our stop this week is here, at the Benedictine Monastery of Santa Maria of Montserrat, quite a huge complex which was laboriously carved into the narrow space left among these gigantic ochre rocks that ascend here to the sky like pipes of an organ. The mountain is sprinkled with little shrines, hermitages, chapels, and other religious marks from the bottom to the top. Beginning with the Middle Ages and probably following more ancient traditions, Christian monks, nuns, and religious people have climbed these heights to pursue a life of contemplation, were it in company with others or in solitude. Here, spiritual contemplation and landscape sightseeing really bind together, and it does not surprise that the Benedictines found this most high spot as ideal to live their rule in cenobitic life. As we said earlier, here in Montserrat, Ignatius concludes what we called a Marian Pilgrimage, for this monastery is dedicated to Our Lady, whose little black statue is object of popular devotion and mass pilgrimage still today. The statue, a medieval art piece with a Byzantine flavor, blackened over time, apparently because of the smoke of candles and fumes in the chapel. But this color became characteristics of it, as well as some other black Madonnas in Europe and Mexico, for example, and restorations began to apply a black taint to it very soon. Here, Ignatius spends days in prayer, contemplation, and confessions. He makes a general confession, which was written, and performs a new, crucially significant acts that, as acted in the context of Montserrat, reflect that here a radical final decision was taken. These acts involved his mule, his clothes and garments, and finally the sword. The sword that gave him spiritual troubles on his way to Montserrat. In his autobiography, Ignatius recounts a disturbing dispute on the road with a Moor, whom Ignatius said such things about Our Lady that he ought to charge forward in defense of her honor. Thankfully, while Ignatius was pondering about this, the Moor had already gone. Ignatius rode his mule on the same road seeking for the Moor, but when the road parted, Ignatius decided to let the mule decide. He says if the mule took the village road, he would find the Moor and stab him. If the mule did not go toward the village, but took the highway, then he would let him be. The end is known. The mule took the highway and rode Ignatius to Montserrat. But this story shows once again three recurrent marks that we are now acquainted with. A chivalric ethos, the offense to the honor of a lady that must be paid, the Blessed Virgin, which was so important to Ignatius to become even the subject of a conversation with the Moor, and finally, the troubling relation with the sword. The same sword for which, when he was young, he had to ask, he was forced to ask the permit, as for self-defense from somebody threatening him. When Ignatius reaches Montserrat, this sword has become a symbol of a life that is now old, past, dismissible. He kneels again in front of Our Lady and lays down his sword. He will dismiss his mule and robes too, and descending from Montserrat, he will look really and radically a different person from the one who had climbed there a few days before. True, the process of dismissal of the old person begins way before. Leaving Aranzazu, Ignatius has already dismissed his company who were with him, and before arriving in Montserrat, he bought the pilgrim vests with which he wanted to travel to Jerusalem. But it is here, After a series of vigils and again chivalric-style acts that were inspired to him by the readings of the chivalric tale of Amadis de Gaula, one that had caught his fervid imagination when he was young, that a new Ignatius was born. And yes, the confessors with whom Ignatius got acquainted certainly played a role, but it is in the solitude of this context that Ignatius feels finally directed by the Blessed Virgin toward the radical path of a pilgrim life. He says in his autobiography, in March 1522, on the eve of Our Lady, at night, he went as secretly as he could to a beggar, and stripping off all his garments, he gave them to him. He dressed himself in his chosen attire and went to kneel before the altar of Our Lady. At times in this way, at other times standing with his pilgrim staff in his hand, he spent the whole night. After spending the night in this way, here we have an unexpected end of the story. If we were pilgrims, there is a very easy thing to do from Montserrat. The vibrant, lively city of Barcelona, the main and closest harbor, is there. You can see the outskirts almost of it from the very top of the mountain. Just descending from Montserrat and following the Llobregat River, a few hours away, and you will be walking among the modern called Ramblas. But this is not what Ignatius did. Listen directly from his tale. He left at daybreak so as not to be recognized. He did not take the road that led straight to Barcelona, where he would come across many who would recognize him and honor him, but instead turned toward a small town called Manresa. Manresa is very close to Montserrat, a small town with a magnificent cathedral and a medieval bridge still crossing the blonde waters of the Cardener River. Why did he choose Manresa, and why did he come here? Only to escape the societal obligations that he would have undergone if riding to Barcelona, where possibly a noble could not go so disguised under poor clothes? Ignatius says that in Manresa he planned to stay in a hospice a few days, as well as to note some things in his book. Well, you certainly know already the story. These few days will become 11 months, and the notes he planned to take in his book would be the core of what today is known as one of the most extraordinary guides for the formation of Christian souls, the spiritual exercises. We see you there on the banks of the Cardener, where an illumination is going to shake again Ignatius' life. A few steps down the known cave where the tradition holds Ignatius drafted the exercises during these months. Meanwhile, I recommend you to do what our students normally do when we are here in the Monastery of Montserrat. Wait for the daily touristic crowd to go. Many come from just a few hours through the steep cable railway to visit the monastery. Put on your hiking shoes and reach the top of Montserrat. Hiking and conversing in groups till the top, contemplating the landscape and the ancient spirituality of this mountain, and then descending with reinvigorated spirit. I tell you that every year, when I see them coming back, I don't see classmates anymore. I see friends. And for a teacher, this is truly rejoicing for the happening of a miracle. The miracle of Montserrat.
A warm welcome to all of our pilgrims to this beautiful and magnificent place called Montserrat. Professor Cristiano Casalini has introduced you to this place, and now I'd like to join with you as we reflect upon this week's theme that accompanies this extraordinary Benedictine monastery located just outside of Barcelona. And that theme for our reflection this week is solitude. It's important, I think, for all of us to take some time this week to reflect upon the role that solitude plays in our everyday lives. We live in a time where the temptation is to constantly busy oneself. There are so many activities, so much stimulation, so many possibilities. that a lifetime isn't enough. For many of our students here at Boston College, there's a fear of missing out on something. So strong is the desire to be active and in the company of others that the idea of stillness seems sometimes to be not only foreign, but perhaps even to be unattractive. It's an interesting tension because of the confusion that is present. Many of us confuse being lonesome with being alone. At first glance, they appear to be the same because by appearance, they can look alike. The student who's in her room at the dorm by herself can be perceived as being either lonely or alone. The truth is that they're completely different from one another. One is desirable, and the other we try to escape from. To be lonely is an awful, awful feeling, something that we try to avoid, and when loneliness manifests itself in our lives, it isn't pretty. I don't know anyone who wishes for increased loneliness in her or his life. Nobody wishes for more time to be lonesome. However, and interestingly, as a person grows, she or he discovers the value of having time to be alone. Remember, the word alone is a compound word. It's literally to be all one. Isn't that interesting? When we're all one, when we're alone, we are feeling more and more whole. We grow in our capacity to feel more integrated, more complete, and I would suggest more holy and more close to God. To have moments to be alone is a gift for strengthening our interior lives, and we discover that time spent alone is time that is spent refueling, time that is spent receiving divine love, time spent for healing, time spent for imagining. Time spent alone is essential time. For St. Ignatius, so many important things occurred for him in Montserrat, and we can study and ponder his life in order to mine it for some insight about how we might grow in this week there. And I see three areas that we might reflect upon during our time in Montserrat. First, it is in Montserrat that we discover the gift of creation. From a distance, Montserrat is absolutely stunning. It is literally marvelous, something of creation to be gazed upon because it's so unusual, so breathtakingly striking. Its unusualness makes it stand out, and when I've seen it, I found myself resistant to take my eyes off of it. So curious is it, so fascinating. This can be a week of pilgrimage where each one of us takes time in solitude to be moved by the creation in our midst and to cultivate within ourselves two very distinct virtues that are so often available to us through the gift of nature: wonder and awe. I love those two virtues of wonder and awe because they're so very foreign to us these days. Too often our minds trump our hearts and we want answers. We want to know. My mind wants to figure out how Montserrat came to be and to study and ponder the geography, the topography, the climate, the movement of winds over millennia that led to the creation of that magnificent mountain. My heart simply rests in wonder and awe. You see, wonder and awe don't need to know. They simply rest in suspended marvel. It's so rare that we give permission for wonder and awe to have air for their breathing. I really encourage you to take time to rest in these two virtues, and I believe that you will discover through them an even deeper grace of being alone, of being all one in the midst of nature. Second, it's a gift in Montserrat that we discover the gifts of liberation and healing. For it's in Montserrat that Ignatius experiences freedom through the grace that comes from making a good confession and to be freed from the captivity of sin. That means that a place of solitude like Montserrat is a place that facilitates healing. When we're still, we become aware of those parts of our lives where there's hurt and pain. To be human is to be a sinner. And all of us have areas in our lives where we've experienced brokenness, either done onto us or our having done onto others. It's the human condition. Solitude is not a place for wallowing in the past and for getting stuck in our brokenness. I believe rather that solitude affords us with the opportunity to reflect upon our brokenness, our woundedness, and to present it to God in order to ask for healing and strength. In this sense, Montserrat becomes a school of wisdom where we learn from the brokenness of life and through the mystery of the Paschal path, the Easter path of Jesus. We discover that through the mysteries of healing, our brokenness and our weakness become precisely the places where God's power is made manifest. Third, it is in Montserrat where Ignatius lays down his sword and chooses to leave it behind as he moves forward. Perhaps in this holy journey that you are making, you are becoming aware of a kind of sword that you carry with you and that you use either for extreme protection of yourself or as a sort of weapon against others, or as a burdensome weight that you carry along with you wherever you go. There are all sorts of symbolic swords that we bear. For example, a cutting sarcasm or bitterness, an unwelcoming sharpness toward others, a heavy heart defined by inner lies or harm done to oneself by others or by oneself to others. None of this needs to be carried along in life. All of it can be entrusted to God, to be left behind, so that we might in freedom continue to propel forward in the pilgrimage journey of life. Note that nobody told Ignatius to leave his sword behind in Montserrat. It was in freedom that he chose to entrust it to Our Lady of Montserrat. It's the same for you and for me. Every person is free to carry with her or himself whatever she or he wishes for the journey. The solitude of Montserrat, however, gives us time to be alone in order to become aware of what we carry. It provides us with the opportunity for healing and liberation, and it permits us to leave behind what we feel called to relinquish in order to move toward greater freedom as we go forward. I wish you a very holy week in Montserrat, a week filled with wonder and awe and time to be alone so that you might receive the grace of healing. There's so much grace to receive here. Cristiano and I will look forward to meeting you next in Manresa come the following week. Take care, everyone, and God bless.